At the Superdome for all the poor people who had lost their homes. If they didn't have money or a car or a boat, they said, bring what you can as long as it flows. Come on down, they said, don't panic, and bring some clothes, bring the kids and the sickly and all the old folk. The rumor got around and no one knew why. The U.S. government was gonna let them die, Lord. Let them die, let them die, the president said, in not so many words, but that's what he did. Let them die, let them die. The governor said, with 12,000 body bags just to pick up the dead. Let them die, let them die. The mayor ain't in. I think he went to Dallas to help his family settle in.
It's so weird to be smiling.
I know.
You know, you guys are gonna start pulling like, you know, wooden pieces with like nails sticking out of them. You gotta get that like out of the way as soon as you can. Or like, you know, like I said, let everybody know, hey, there's like, you know, a nail, you know, sticking out of that piece, you know, take it out, or, you know, watch out for that.
All photographs. People's photographs. All ruined. Really stuck together.
I helped out at Ground Zero for a couple of weeks back on 9/11. I came down in November to do some volunteer work, but there wasn't much going on so far as gutting or anything like that. Came back again in July, and been coming down every couple of weeks to help out. I wanted to get on and do some hands-on stuff, all right? Something that I could see progress immediately.
Do you see progress?
Not much, not much.
I guess just knowing that I did a little something, and that's all you can do is just chip away at this. I mean, look around.
Will you come back?
Yes. Yes. Until it's done, I'll come back.
Until it's done. And if it takes
Years.
If it takes years, you will come back.
We are filming in New Orleans, shooting a movie. And yeah, that's what brought me. I'm one of the actors. I don't have 1 million to donate, $1 million to donate, so why not donate myself to do some relief work here, which is good exercise. But besides that, I think it's just you know, a good thing to do from the heart. That's what it is. Yeah.
I just think, you know, all over the world we watched the floods, you know, in London and Johannesburg and, you know, New York, and all over Europe. Everyone was glued to the television just going, oh my God, it just looked like Hades, it looked like the end of the earth. So when the film arrived here, it was, you know, we were really keen to get stuck in. And
So you planned that from the beginning?
Yeah, as soon as we knew the film was here. I hate the roaches though. With the three of us, one of us scared of snakes, the other scared of roaches, the other scared of rats, so we've got it covered. We cover each other's back and we're fine.
You know, I personally have a home in California, and you know, it makes you not really want to complain about anything. I need to paint, and this, that, and the other, and like, you know, move or scratch the wall, you know, and like you see this, it's crazy.
Do you think New Orleans could be rebuilt with volunteers alone?
I mean, sure it could, but at the same time, it shouldn't be. Like, I think that that's part of why, you know, people pay taxes and, you know, give a portion of their earnings, is that so also in situations like this, to where there is that assistance that comes through and says, all right, you know, we're here for you.
We have had many people who have come here to volunteer. Many young people, either just graduating from college or maybe a few years into their careers, have decided that this is the new frontier. This is where they want to go and make a difference. Because I think there is that feeling here that, you know, as bad as things are, you can make a difference. You can really come here and change things, build a new society, if you will.
I actually want to be like a part of the New Orleans community, like in my life. Like, I want to see, I know it's going to take longer than a year, 2 years. I think it would be like a 15 to 20 year.
So you want to move to New Orleans?
Yeah, I actually want to be there to see it change, be like, wow, like, I did that. I helped New Orleans bring it back to its greatness.
Particularly those early groups that came down. They went back home really transformed. I mean, I heard anecdotal stories of volunteers after the storm who went back to their communities and found that they couldn't relate in the same way to their families and to their friends. And so this volunteers groups would kind of like have their little meetings, you know, at coffee houses because they had shared this common experience and common bond. But I think that the intensity of that experience started encouraging more and more people to come down. And I think that may be one reason why it's continued to grow instead of diminish, is that people came down here and had a profound experience. And I think that a lot of that has to do with how special and unique we are as a city. That people came down here, they found people who were resilient, they were warm, and we had fun. You know, despite all the loss, we still look for every opportunity to party and laugh and celebrate.
I think for those people who come, it's a chance for them to see a real, live, real-time disaster that is not only has happened, but continues to happen. And I think it allows them to connect in a very real, visceral way with what's going on. And when they leave New Orleans and go back, I think they become witnesses and ambassadors for the absurdity of the recovery and how dare our national agenda to sort of forget that New Orleans has been devastated.
And I saw my baby there. She was stretched out on a long white table, so cold, so pale, just laying there.
I grew up near a Superfund site, so I have a lot of sick relatives. And so I had the experience very early on of having a lot of friends with cancer and a lot of relatives with cancer and health issues and autoimmune diseases and disorders and connective tissue diseases and stuff. So, and I also watched no one get in trouble for it. And I remember at a very early age thinking, that's not cool. Things like that kind of set you up to have an issue with your government and with corporate America, for sure. It's really funny when you talk about common ground because there were so many hundreds of people from all over the world that were coming here wanting to help, and they just needed a space to help from. When you talk about co-founders, you'd really have to name about 300 people or something. We were the first to have a distribution center and a clinic in the 9th Ward, and we had the only clinic on the West Bank. We're just meeting needs. You have folks that have lost a lot, are extremely angry, and have very little privilege to lose in regards to standing up to their government, you know? People who saw their grandmothers that were left to die or whose grandmothers did die with them in their attics while they waited 10 days for water from the government. You know, these kind of things. People are really angry with their government. And I think it's appropriate. You know, I think it's appropriate considering what they just went through.
I spent 24 years in this house, you know, so, and I mean, if you think about it, I'm a statistic. I was supposed to be in a project on welfare, you know. I was never any of that because I never wanted to be any of that. And I did not want to show my children that this is all there is to life, is just to be sitting down there waiting for somebody to hand you something. And that's not how I feel right now. But I understand that there's many people who think that that's how we feel. When I worked for those 30 some odd years, because I started working when I was 17 years old. I graduated at 18, went into the military, and been working ever since. So the thing is that when you look at me as like I'm taking something, all I'm getting back is what I done paid into the system. I think it's payback time.
Well, it's going to smell a lot better now.
What do I need? I need to believe that in this life, at some point, I need not be ruled by strife. I need to know that my connection to the Creator is real. Do you have an earthly clue as to how I feel? I need to know that the life I lead isn't in vain. They are trying to make me believe only death will end the pain. My life has been turned upside down. Now here we are dealing with these clowns. Come over here and walk in my shoes. You'll no longer wonder what are the blues. It's so hard to heal when your life has been disrupted. Now we sit and wait, praying the process won't be corrupted. If we believe in the higher power, we must know that we are approaching the hour. Thank you very much. That's how I feel.
Hi, hon.
Thank you all so very much. Thank you. Lord, Lord, Lord. Y'all have been a blessing. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Look, don't even worry about that. I don't care if you're wet or not.
Thank you.
I'll dry you off. I'm a cool breeze. Yeah.
God bless you. Where are you staying now?
In Hammond, Louisiana. They had talked for the longest about widening the industrial canal. But the people who lived along the canal didn't want to sell their houses. Guess what? Ain't no houses there now.
And we're standing on the site of our former home. It had 8 feet of water for 2.5 weeks. and then stood for another month or so with mold growing and everything else happening before we were able to re-enter the house and begin to do some recovery of things that we hoped could find. It happened because there was an engineering failure, and a failure on the part of both elected and appointed officials to maintain the levees. I mean, when one looks at, for example, the Netherlands, where so much of the landscape is below sea level, they're consciously and systematically doing something about it. Whereas here, I think people let things slide. And I think we were really let down.
It's really very difficult for people here. You age a lot quicker now than you ever did before. It's standard point of reference now. I mean, we're pre-9/11, we're post-9/11. We're pre-Katrina, we're post-Katrina.
I think for this sort of intergenerational group that's alive now, Katrina for here will be the equivalent of the term the war for my parents, our parents' generation, as a line of demarcation.
They made an offer saying you can get $7,900. I said, you got to be crazy. But their estimate of fixing my house was $123,000. Huh. Their own estimate. And they come back and tell me we're going to give you $7,900. I mean, that's, you know, what doesn't make any sense. My neighbor, he's a carpenter, he's helping me with the work. I can't wait until he falls down. No. I can't hire a contractor to do it because I don't have the money to do it. I mean, this is America. What's wrong with these people?
The Dutch said it best when they reviewed our levee systems, and their engineers looked at the land, and they spent months and months and months surveying everything. And they said, yes, Louisiana can be protected adequately. We've protected Holland. But where they really start scratching their heads, and they just don't understand the United States, is why isn't it a national will? It has to be the national will to do it. And it's not. It's a line item on somebody's bill.
I almost feel like the White House kind of ghettoized the region by focusing on New Orleans. It was very easy for a lot of the country to perceive that what happened in New Orleans was happening just to poor black people, because those were the images that they saw on TV. Of course, what happened as a result of Katrina was not just New Orleans. It was on the entire region. It was certainly not just poor black people. And there's certainly significant impacts that this region has on our national economy, with the port, for example. But I think because we just have a White House that's evil, and a White House that has so directed resources overseas, that we've just had to fight every inch of the way to get what we were deserved.
I think there was a major mistake made in the first instance. This never should have been treated as a disaster. It should have been treated like a total economic calamity, and you have to rebuild the entire structure. But instead, the prism that was used was looking through one government act, the Stafford Act, to see what minor interventions there should be rather than what major interventions there should have been. As a matter of fact, I would not have had FEMA involved at all. I would have done this through HUD, to redo the cities and not use FEMA, which is an organization that's really there for small disasters rather than there for a Marshall Plan type program. So HUD would have been, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, would have been a far better vehicle.
Some of the regulations that might make sense in a typical disaster, like the tornado that hit Atlanta, absolutely did not make sense and made it unworkable after this disaster because of the magnitude. You know, when we've lost, you know, all of your fire stations, all of your police stations, you know, your entire city park, and you basically are saying, okay, you spend the money to repair it, we're going to take our time and go over your invoices and everything with a fine-tooth comb to make sure you haven't violated any regulations, and then we'll reimburse you. Well, where are you supposed to get that money up front? And the fact that the same regulations that are making it very difficult, if not impossible, to rebuild some of our public infrastructure were waived after 9/11 and were waived after many other natural disasters. How do you explain that? There was an absolute absence of political will in Washington to do what needed to be done.
Hurricane Katrina was in 2005. I can't believe we still got people out here living on the streets of the world. And nothing has been done with as far as public housing is concerned. There's only 2 shelters that are operating in the New Orleans area. There's no women's shelters that are currently operating except for one over on Rampart Street. The city council and the mayor really need to get together and help these people with some housing.
We are worthy of housing, permanent housing. We are worthy of good jobs, permanent jobs. We have been ridiculed, we have been talked about. There are even some that have been killed because they are homeless. Because there's a stigma that we don't want anything in life. But there are some of us, most of us, that want a decent job, want to work. We deserve fair wages and pay like everyone else. Even though this is a season of giving, let's make this the season of living. We are worthy. We are worthy. We are worthy. We are worthy.
I have 25 years security work. I work for local firms, New Orleans Fire Patrol, other different companies and stuff. Again, I have no transportation right now. I have no income that's coming in. A lot of their jobs require you to go somewhere. I have no assets of that right now to be able to use for that purpose. My house was destroyed, not the house that I own, but a house that I rented in a little garden district. The roof was destroyed on the home, and the landlord chose not to repair it because the value of the house wasn't really worth to repair. You need a full-time job to get on your feet, but you can't sleep on the street and have a full-time job. It just doesn't work out.
The fact is, this country has enough wealth to rebuild a damaged city. It really does. And I, for one, being a bit of a history buff, wish that the federal government would reinstitute some of the projects, the WPA programs and so on, you know, but that's treading awfully close to socialism in the current view, isn't it? It's what Roosevelt was accused of doing. I try and avoid that conversation.
All the projects that this state runs on happened in the New Deal. The roads, the highways happened in the New Deal. The New Deal was a great deal for Louisiana, a great deal for America. So that's a great analogy. And the Marshall Plan, both, fantastic. When I talk to people around the country, they say, why isn't there a Marshall Plan in the Gulf? And I'm talking about very conservative people that I've met in Iowa and so forth. They say this is a national disaster. Why are they treating it like it's a local disaster?
Well, I think if you look at how our social policy has gone for the last 30, 35 years, both Democrat and Republican, I don't think you can, it's across party, there's been a reluctance of Americans to have the national government involved, and there's been a movement away from that, and for a variety of reasons, and we could talk about those. But I think what we're saying is that in the crisis, when there's a crisis of this magnitude, the federal government has stepped in. There's precedent for that. And so we're calling on that to go back to something not that didn't work, but to something that did work. There's a strong sense of individualism in this country, obviously, and voluntarism fits in well with that. And there's a long tradition of voluntarism, and I would never belittle it. I do it all the time myself. I think it's really important. I encourage my students to do it all the time. I'd also want to say you know, there's got to be also some structural change that goes along with the volunteerism. And that is also an American tradition. So I am here in New Orleans with a project called the Gulf Coast Civic Works Project, which is the idea of 100,000 jobs, federal public work jobs. So these 100,000 people would have the jobs, but what they would do is build those 200,000 units of housing that were destroyed in Louisiana, and the 60,000 that were destroyed in Mississippi. We would say is have a housing surge. You know, our president talks about having a surge in Iraq. We want to see a surge of housing.
Had I been president of the United States, we would have had a national Gulf tax. I'd say this is where the energy comes from. This is a part of our historic past, much like the Tennessee Valley Authority, which was a WPA project. I'm going to have a Gulf tax on energy and energy use for the entire nation. And everyone in the country is going to help this place recover to preserve the nation's future.
They got a plan for us. These people out here, they're gonna help us. You know, they're gonna help us do what we gotta do. And we're gonna get you something for your birthday next week. And I'm gonna call the people so they can come see you for your birthday, so you don't have to worry about your birthday.
So these people?
Yeah, they're gonna come. They're gonna look out for us, okay? We're gonna be all right, okay, Mom? I'm trying hard out here.
Good.
We lost everything. We lost our equity. We lost everything. I lost one of my close friends as a result of the storm. And at that point, once it's all gone, why not stick around and fight? You want to take my house? You want to bulldoze my house? All right, come at it. But I'll tell you what, I am going to fight to the death, and you may take it, but I'm going to go down swinging. And what I loved was I'm in a neighborhood where 7,000 other people said, we're going down swinging. We may go down. You may beat us, but we're going down swinging. The mayor pulled together this august panel of experts from all around the country, and they came out with their plan, and we'll never forget it, on January 18th, 2006. And I looked at my paper, and I saw that the final report was out, and here was this green dot over Broadmoor, and I just thought, oh my gosh. Here they wanted to take our neighborhood as a drainage park for the wealthy uptown neighborhood, and we just said, there's no way that they're going to compensate us.
After the storm, the few of us who were here late 2005 began meeting, at first on the phone and then in person as we trickled back into the city. It was clear that there was a problem with our neighborhood's survival. There were plans on the books and plans in the works to make this a commercial, industrial a corridor at the expense of the people who lived in the neighborhood.
That's the deal, right? Across the entire world. Because when there's a disaster comes, people with money try to restrict the way that aid is distributed in order to increase their own financial situation, to better themselves financially. And that's what happened here. You have the Ninth Ward and the lower Ninth Ward, and traditionally developers have wanted it and haven't been able to get it. And so a storm comes, it runs everybody out. They say across the country how devastating and ruined it is, nobody should come back. Then they discouraged people from coming back by simply not allowing things to be rebuilt, not starting the schools, not doing any trash cleanup, these kind of things. By doing something this great, like the humanitarian effort in rebuilding, is definitely in opposition to what the developers want, because we're bringing low-income, marginalized residents back to the city. So yeah, it creates the tension.
A lot of neighborhoods also were having a lot of trouble with City Hall and other recommendations, and a lot of their strategies were, let's light the torches and burn down City Hall. And emotionally, we liked that strategy. We thought that was great, but we didn't think it was going to be real productive. And so what we decided instead was we were going to beat them at their own game. So we went through that report and we pulled out every value and recommendation of that report, and then we did a more detailed plan that they did of Broadmoor, and we showed how their plan was actually inconsistent with their values and our plan was more consistent with their values.
We've been meeting formally weekly since December of 2005 and knew that we had to come up with a plan. And so we were able to get some world-class planners. With the help of these planners, we devised the Lower Ninth Ward Plan for Sustainable Restoration.
So when they say they care about local history and culture and architect and safety, and this is for everybody and not just the rich but the working class and those who are disadvantaged, that our plan actually did a better job of implementing their values than their plan. And at the end of the day, our plan beat their plan and we got rid of the green dot over Broadmoor. We literally finished the planning process before the rest of the city had even started.
If you look at what's going on in the lower Ninth Ward right now, for example, the recovery is as much in the hands of, the Holy Cross neighborhood and Brad Pitt, for goodness sakes, as it is in the hands of the city government or the state government or the federal government, for that respect.
So Make It Right was founded by Brad Pitt as an affordable housing program designed to bring former residents of the lower Ninth Ward who want to return home back to houses that are better than what they had before, back to houses that are safe, that are healthy, that are green, energy efficient, and affordable.
It's really important to understand that when Brad Pitt first came in, his plans were, like most real estate developers, to buy some land, build some houses, and to sell those houses, even at an affordable price, to first come, first serve. And it was the community that stood up and said, no, we're not going to have that. That doesn't build community for us. What could build community for us is that if you would help us bring our community home by helping each individual property owner rebuild on their property. Because we don't want you to buy all of this property where you're in control. We want you to work with us to case manage the recovery of every one of these families individually. Then became a project that it was a community project rather than a developer project. So it was bottom up rather than top down.
And then we had the Pink Houses fundraiser event. Brad was inspired by a scene, the Benjamin Button movie here filmed in New Orleans, and they were shooting a scene in a field. And in real life, there wasn't a house in the field, but in the movie, they were going to digitally impose a house into this green field. So they needed something to represent where the house would ultimately be. So they built a life-size replica of this house out of hot pink fabric wrapped around scaffolding. From that evolved the idea to build 150 life-size symbolic homes to represent where the homes used to be before the storm, and then where they will be as soon as we're able to rebuild the area. So that was our primary fundraising push. We raised about $10 million. We haven't solicited corporate donations simply because if we're able to fund this with private donations, they come with fewer strings attached, frankly, just like government funding as well. How wonderful would it be if New Orleans could emerge as from the remnants of Hurricane Katrina as a model green city. And really the lower Ninth Ward wants to be a microcosm of rebuilding as an example of how to rebuild homes that are green and sustainable over the long run. So yes, we want to be an example for New Orleans, but also our goal is to be the largest green affordable housing community in the world.
And sustainability is, it's basically just the old ways. They're the old country ways. Thrift and reusing things and doing things right the first time, painstakingly, and making sure that the best use of something is achieved. Hey, come on. Sorry. So you think it's going to be done by the meeting?
Oh yeah, it's
easy. Kurt. Okay, this is the Emerging Green Builders and Historic Green. It's a 2-week event we're having here, and they're working on the church bell. And once that is complete, we're going to ring the bell every time somebody comes home.
And tonight,
oh my God,
tonight's going to be the first time.
Oh,
so yeah.
We all understand that any one of us could become the next victim. There's a lot of personal reason to act on this, because I live in Kansas City, which is prone to flooding, as well as earthquakes, possibly, as well as tornadoes all the time. We love our tornadoes back in Kansas. So, if it could happen down here to these people, how could it not happen where I live? My grandparents' generation had the Second World War. My parents' generation had Vietnam, and some would say the War on Terror is my generation's Great War. No, it isn't. War on Terror, it pales in comparison to what we have to do to save the planet, because we may win the war on terrorism, but if we destroy the planet while we're doing that, it's a war lost no matter what. So this is our great battle, and it will continue to be for well after I'm gone from this earth.
This is WWOZ Street Talk, stories of New Orleans cultural rebuilding. My name is David Weinberg. Shortly after Hurricane Katrina hit, Peter Spring decided to leave his home in southern Oregon and come to New Orleans to help replace many of the city's damaged pianos.
I'm all here now. All my stuff is here. I'm here, and I've budgeted the next 3 years of my life to be here and really try and help and make a difference here.
I'm a musician, and I've gotten my deepest satisfaction throughout my life from playing jazz. So after the storms hit, I wanted to come down here and do something to help the city, and particularly the musicians, and particularly the jazz musicians, recover. My son had died in 2002, and I'd been processing his loss due to cancer. And he loved funk and jazz, and it felt like just the right thing to do to finally do something to honor his memory and start a foundation. I got lists of musicians who had evacuated and lost their instruments from the Jazz Foundation of America, the New Orleans Musicians Clinic, and other organizations, and I sent out instruments to musicians who had relocated, and was extremely gratified to get emails and letters back from some of them saying, "We're working again. We're doing what we were put on this earth to do, and we're making a living. Thank you. It couldn't have been done without the instrument that you supplied." The second stage was, that I'm in now, is moving toward helping in the schools. So I've given away a lot of the instruments that I brought down and that people have sent to me as a conduit to the students so they could have their own personal instruments. I came up with the term the third responder to define myself, to say I'm not here for the danger, for going out and rescuing people in boats. You know, hats off and tremendous respect for the people who do that, who put themselves in harm's way and really help those in the direst of need. And then there are the second responders who come along and do the cleanup and the repair of the infrastructure. And tremendous respect for them, but I'm here for morale, for spirit, for helping the people, the feelings in people's hearts through helping the music return.
This is WWOZ Street Talk, stories of New Orleans cultural rebuilding. We are living in the city with the most significant musical history in the country, and yet we do not have housing for most of our musicians and culture bearers. And if we don't find a way to get them home, we will lose the only thing that can help New Orleans rebuild. And without that culture, there is little hope for the future generations of New Orleans.
Harry and I, we came here, checked on houses, and then drove to Houston to go play for the evacuees who were stuck in the Astrodome. And it was on that ride that we started talking. First, Harry said, man, we should start a school. I said, school? I don't want to start a school. That's just more bureaucracy. He says, and it just went, we should start a village. We should start something, an education center. What do the guys need? They need homes. Well, let's get them some homes. I work with Habitat for Humanity. Let's build homes for guys.
I think what makes the Musicians Village attractive to me is both that I'm going to own a house, which on a musician's budget as an experimental cello player. I didn't think I would be able to get that going for at least another 20 years. So that's very exciting to me, but also the commitment to stay here in New Orleans as a musician. My roommate's coming out here, so I'm just gonna let him through.
Oh, should we help you? Yeah, that'd be great. Are you gonna drive both of them?
Yeah. Have a good gig. Knock 'em dead. He's got his clown suit strapped to the back there. He's gonna go do a unicycle clown routine in Baton Rouge. I get my energy and creativity from playing a gig and being with an audience and being with other musicians and playing with other musicians. I think music does have a double role. There's this duality of purpose. And I think the city embraces extremes and it embraces that duality. I certainly feel like music as a celebration and music as a mourning thing are the same. I was wondering, well, what am I going to do here? But music, it became clear that I had a role to continue playing music. One of the goals I had personally for my life is to be a woman improviser with an instrument, not necessarily a singer. I've been very supportive in this community playing jazz and playing improvised music, which is a big part of why I want to stay here. I can't be anywhere else. I'm from Belgium originally, and I thought about going back to Belgium many times, but I can't. You know, I can't go anywhere else. This is my home. It's got me, so I'm staying here. I moved in a couple days before my birthday, so I had a huge party, and it was a nice welcome, you know, housewarming / birthday party, and yeah, and I'm slowly working on it, and I love it. I love living here. It's wonderful. It feels like a built-in community, and I felt welcome and felt like I could get along with my neighbors right off the bat. No matter what happens, we're all still musicians, and we all work for the same goal.
It's turned out much better and much faster than I could have ever imagined. There's about 70 built now. We're going to keep building. The Baptist Crossroads Foundation gave us enough money to build another 300 homes. So we're just going to keep building.
Well, this is typical of Habitat around the world, and to face disaster areas. Last year, Rosa and I were with Jonathan and others in India. We built 100 homes. It only took us about 4 days. We thought 5 days, but Brad Pitt showed up. And when people heard about it, we were inundated with volunteers and finished 1 day early. But during that time, we went over to the tsunami area and saw the remarkable work that Habitat's doing there. But I think the most challenging and the most gratifying Habitat project I've ever seen is here in this area. And all you have to do is look around at the homes to see the great challenge that we face for the future.
Now I present to you Console Queen, Sharice Harris Nelson.
I'm really dedicated to preserving the history of the Mardi Gras Indians, not only for individuals who are very interested in the tradition, but for individuals who are Mardi Gras Indians. It's very important that we preserve our history and our culture and in ways that are accessible to people who mask as Mardi Gras Indians. For me to work and preserve the culture for academics doesn't really serve my community any good.
My theme is America Weeps. My sister did this patch as we weep for what has been done and what has not been done in an effort to rebuild our city. Council Queen, Guardians of the State! Council Queen, yes!
The elders tell us the tradition started when it was illegal for people of African descent to participate in the local Mardi Gras celebrations or to cover their faces in masquerade. So what they did was, instead of participating in those Western type Mardi Gras celebration, which glorified Western monarchs and Western ways of life, they chose to use the native motif to pay homage to the bonds that were formed between Native people and people of African descent during the period when my ancestors were enslaved. And rather than go into areas where the other Mardi Gras celebrations were going on, they masked in their neighborhoods. You know, people might not consider it, but you're a community leader and you're a community builder. And you serve to build community. When people see you and they ask, are you coming out for Mardi Gras? What time you coming out for? Because they want to catch you. That serves to build community. When is the parade? That serves to build community. I don't think there's been an authentic outreach into the community to provide funding.
No station.
No station? Independent fields or something?
Yes.
All right, you want to talk to these guys? They're just in the...
No, I don't want to talk to them right now.
She's a special lady.
I live here. This is my home. What? Yes, they're trying to pass. That's another thing. Tour buses pass all day long. There's no privacy. If you want to come outside and just hurry up and come out with your hair not combed and check your mail, you don't know if you can do that because they might have a tour bus and the people might be pointing to you trying to saying, oh, I think she might be a musician or whatever. I try not to let it bother me, but it kind of does. You come outside to put the garbage out and there's a tour bus, a whole bus stops and points at you. And you're wondering what they're saying. Just human nature. The ghetto paparazzi.
There's a huge push, even right before the storm was going on, of the whole volunteerism idea, where people spend their vacations or their time away from their families and offices and homes doing volunteer work for vacations. And so after the storm, that has just tremendously increased in our area. And so we have had conventions. The realtors, when they came in, they spent up to 2 weeks here with like 100 volunteers a day. We have meeting planners that are coming in a couple weeks bringing 300.
A lot of organizations have come in to help, but a lot of the people who are employed in the organizations are young, white, middle-class people who now relocated to the area to help the poor New Orleanians. So we're being done. Volunteer is one thing, but you know, when you have paid staff, and I get called and I get requests to go to a lot of meetings, and I used to go to a lot of them, but then I started saying, you need my information. I'm taking out time from working in my community on a grassroots level, I'm not looking for compensation because I do it from my heart. It's not what we do. It's not anything we do. But you're looking for me to stop what I'm doing, neglect my community, to come sit at a table and give you ideas, to put in a report, and you're being paid $45,000 or $50,000 a year. But I have to come to you to share. Where, if, to me, true community organizing, you'd hire somebody from New Orleans and they'd come just like you are. And they'd sit on my porch or they'd sit at my kitchen table and we'd have a conversation.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Because it's still that elitists come to the big house. It's not true partnerships. The success of the rebuilding of the area, especially of neighborhoods like this, is going to be because of indigenous cultural traditions. People come back for Mardi Gras. People come back for the social and pleasure club neighborhood productions, as they're called, because it's community. It's a part of being who you are. And it speaks to something in your soul. And it speaks to, we're all in this together. It's us. We celebrate. We celebrate life. We celebrate death. All those things are part of the cultural infrastructure of a city.
New Orleans, immediately post-disaster, was a magnet. It was, as one national planner told me, this is the Super Bowl of planning. But that talent doesn't go very far when there's no political leadership to move the possibility of planning into implementation.
The bureaucracy and the elected officials, locally and statewide anyway, many, if not all, are in the same position that we are. And there's the vacuum, but it seems to be as much a result of not knowing what to do and how to react as it is of negligence or malevolence or any of those things. That vacuum created a chance for a citizen-driven dynamo or system or whatever to really step in and come to the forefront. And that's something that we really have never had as long as I've been in New Orleans anyway. And it's It's spectacular. People are as engaged as they can be in the system.
It was Broadmoorians themselves that stepped to the plate and said, I care about education, I want to start an education committee. I care about safety, I care about crime, I care about tourism, I care about our elderly, I care about the library, I care about charter schools, and literally set up dozens of committees with dozens of people volunteering. And then all of those committees came up with recommendations, and then they brought all of those recommendations, committee by committee, to the full community, who then voted on what should happen to become our plan.
The flip side of that is citizens are engaged and are driving initiatives on the one hand. On the other hand, the services that should be provided by government are not there.
Thank you all for coming out. It's so nice to see this movement down here.
I'm from Australia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, man. You too.
Hey, Brad,
Great
want to
to
hire
meet
me
you.
next year? I need a job.
Me
too.
Doesn't pay.
The whole Brad Pitt is no different in some ways from all these other people that are coming here. He's just more famous. But he's the one who says, just like a whole lot of other people will say under their breath, he's the one who says out loud and public, in a very public and major worldwide way, we have a problem here. I do think it would have been better if politicians could have said it. But, you know, politicians, I mean, it might just be that we're operating at a time and raising questions about, you know, what is leadership? And how far has leadership degraded to the point where leadership can't be leadership anymore? It's politics.
We have been interviewed literally by teams from every country literally in Europe and now other places around the world, and they all say, and I'm not exaggerating, they all say the same thing, which is, how is it possible that the greatest nation, or the most powerful, the wealthiest nation, allows this to happen to their own people? And if they allow this to happen to their own people, what will they do for us? And what our politicians don't realize in Washington is New Orleans is not a domestic issue, it is a foreign policy issue. And when the rest of the world watches what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, along with that is New Orleans. And how could we possibly think they're going to treat us better when that's how they treat their own?
If people allow themselves to be treated this way, and if we as a country allow human beings to be treated the way they've been treated here, without it causing a severe problem for the overall system, then that lowers the standards across the country on how people can be treated. And if you consider the fact that we have troops in, I believe it's 163 countries right now, we have a lot of power in the world, you know. Our tentacles are everywhere. So if our standards of life are lowered, it really lowers the standards across the entire planet for how people can be treated.
Compassionate civilizations do not eat or neglect their own. They support them. And if this civilization is truly great, this country is truly great, we have resources to care for our own. It is lip service for the politicians to claim greatness and to allow an entire region of the country to suffer at third world status.
I got a question for you.
Sure.
We're from Chicago and we're working with Habitat for Humanity. Would it be okay if our group gets together to take a group picture?
What Katrina, in essence, has done in the country is mobilized youth in a way that hasn't been seen in this country since the 60s. And I think that Katrina was a far better way, because I would much rather see young students, regardless of ethnicity or regardless of political persuasion, with hammers and nails and picket signs.
So I think there's a lot of, maybe not conscious, but at least subconscious action. You know, I mean, when you have 1.5 million people doing something, you have to pay attention to it, right? And I think that there is more than self-interest, more than guilt. You know, I think that there is a movement in a way.
I'm definitely a middle-of-the-road political person. I still believe that the government exists to create some sort of breaker against disaster. You know, it doesn't matter where you live, California, if you live in New York, if you live down here in New Orleans, something can always happen. And the reason we formed this government was to work together to provide a central mechanism for protecting each other. And that central mechanism has most definitely broken.
Our advocacy committee is very, very busy with the mayor, with the governor, with federal groups, with FEMA, with the Army Corps of Engineers, you know, and it's exhausting for them. I mean, it's a constant battle to hold them accountable just to do their job, not to do anything extra, just to do what they're getting paid to do. I mean, we joke here in Broadmoor, imagine if we all got paid to do all this stuff. Imagine what we could do. We just want people to do their job.
Because what we're experiencing in New Orleans right now is a rise of deliberative democracy. The people are rising to the occasion. They are deliberating what's best and what's better and what's worse. And they're acting on those conclusions in mass. The other option is that people will elect people who will understand their needs and will act in good faith on their understanding of the people's needs. That's what we've lost.
It just reached the breaking point where enough was enough. It's so incompetent. It's now literally life or death. And when it's life or death, we're just not standing for that incompetence. And people have risen up and people have had enough. And I hope it infects the whole rest of, you know, the state and the country.
I think that we're back in Boston Harbor. You know, I think this is the Boston Tea Party. I think the people have taken control. And now let's see what happens.
I think we've undergone a revolution. We have gone from being a very laissez-faire, populist kind of state that really let elected officials get away with murder, almost, to a people that now is demanding accountability. It was everything from the rich white folks uptown to folks in the lower Ninth Ward. People all of a sudden say, we're not doing it the old way ever again. So I think that we're entering a whole new era of politics in Louisiana. And I think all elected officials are kind of on notice that they can't do it the same way anymore. And what I'm hoping the next stage is going to be is it will now start getting people running for office and winning office who don't come out of the political mold. Now, how we get that to spread across the country, I'm not quite sure. But, you know, everything's got to start from some point in time.
Pam, do you think this is a revolution?
I do. I don't know if I want that on camera, though. I don't want the other people to know that, right? Not yet. Not until it's won, right? Oh, that's what it was.